right, so we're going to go ahead and remove the front drive shaft, and we're at the transfer case right now. We're going to go ahead and remove these series of bolts all the way around here. Do this for all of the bolts. Now we're going to go ahead and remove these series of bolts on the front drive shaft where it's attached to the front differential. Do this for all 4 bolts. All right, so now we're going to want to go ahead and separate the drive shaft from the transfer case. I'm going to use a screwdriver and just try and work this out like so. We'll pop this out and drop that off to the side. Now we're going to move to the front side of the drive shaft. I want to see if we can just kind of shake this free. Might have to use a screwdriver. Just pop that flange.
That stuff is like falling in the camera.
All right. Now I'm going to go ahead and try and work this out through the back. Manipulate this here just enough to get it out of the vehicle. The transmission crossmember is in the way from us removing the front drive shaft, so we're going to loosen these 4 bolts here and loosen them on the other side, but we're not going to remove it. We're just going to lower it just a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and loosen these bolts a little bit more. We're going to go ahead, We're gonna go ahead and try and remove these bolts slowly, but keep the other side bolted up so we can try and get a little more room here to remove that drive shaft. Use a jack here to support the tail end of the transmission and transfer case. I'm going to go ahead and loosen the other bolts on the other side, and then we're going to try and get some extra room here to get that drive shaft out. Might have to remove these bolts. Might be able to lower that transmission and transfer case a little bit. Give us a little bit of room here. And then set this aside. So we're going to go ahead and raise the transmission and transfer case back up into place. And we're going to start a few of these crossmember bolts back up inside. Do this on both sides. Just going to snug these up. And repeat for the other side. Now we can go ahead and remove that jack. All right, we're going to go ahead and start by removing this clamp right here. Use a pair of cutters or a screwdriver. Work that off. Using a screwdriver, we're just going to go ahead and pop this end cap off here. Now on the inside here, I want to now go ahead and remove this clip right on the inside. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and remove this lock ring right here. Then go ahead and tap off this unit. And with that off, we can now see the remnants of the torn boot. We're just going to go ahead and slice that right off. Go ahead and clean this. If you see any rust or debris buildup, go ahead and use a wire brush to clean this, but this looks pretty good. We're just going to go ahead and put some grease around here. Put your band clamp on there. Go ahead and slide this in. All right, once we have that lined up, I'll go ahead and use the supplied grease and go ahead and squeeze that in to all of the bearings. I also want to go ahead and get the other side. I'm going to go ahead and work that in. Do the same for this side here. Make sure that grease is packed into all of the bearings. Next step, squeeze some of the grease into the inside here. And get that all spread around inside. Be sure to clean this surface of any grease. Next step you want to do, grab the bearing unit. In the face of this here, you want cleaned as well. It's okay to have the grease in with the bearings, but we want to clean the face of this here. And do the same for the other side. I'm going to go ahead and slide this on. I'm going to keep as much grease in there as possible, but yet we want to make sure we have enough room to get that lock ring put back on. All right, with that clip in there, we just want to make sure that that is locked into place. We don't want this to come apart, so just check around the perimeter, make sure it's on. You can go ahead and use a little bit more of the grease. Get that put inside. And then we're going to do our final wipe on the outer perimeter here. Go ahead and get our gasket lined up. Get our cap into position. I'm going to go ahead and get a set of the bolts lined up through the back side. Come through just to get everything lined up in place. We just take this band and pull the slack out of it. We're going to bend this over. We're just going to bend these tabs over like so. I'm just going to work that down. Use a pair of pliers to pinch that. If I could find the pliers, here we go. I'm just going to cut out the excess. I'm just going to go ahead and take that excess there and just bend it back and over. And go ahead and start lining up the bushings. You can go ahead and start lining up the bolts and the components here. So now that we have all the bolts and the spacers lined up, let's go ahead and get this reinstalled in the vehicle. Using a jack, go ahead and support the transfer case and the transmission. We're going to now go ahead and loosen and lower the crossmember here. Now what we're going to do is lower the transmission down. All we'll do is go ahead and feed the drive shaft up. Get this in a position. With this lined up, we're just going to go ahead and get some of these bolts started by hand. We're simply going to go ahead and rotate the drive shaft around to get all of these bolts started. We'll go ahead and start snugging these down. And I'm actually going to go and move around a little bit. I'm not going to do it right in a row. And once these are all tight, we're gonna go ahead and move to the front. All right, so now what we'll do is we're gonna rotate the drive shaft to get that in a position. And we're gonna go ahead and get one of the bolts started in the flange. Once you get it started by hand, we can go ahead and rotate the drive shaft and get another bolt started. Just continue this process for all 4 bolts. I'm going to go ahead and tighten all 4 of these bolts. Make sure all 4 of them are pretty snug. Go ahead and tighten down these back bolts. Make sure all of these are tightened down, pretty snug. And that drive shaft is seated into the seat right there. Just do this for all of the bolts. Now go ahead and raise the transmission and transfer case back up in a position. And we're going to get those bolts started here. Once these 4 are in, go ahead and repeat for the other side. Once the cross member is tight, go ahead and lower the jack. And you can go ahead and remove that completely.